Welcome everyone to
Hello.
the inaugural Story Club. This is Horror Story Club here on YouTube. Today we are discussing what many call Stephen King's very best story. Now, some people in the Discord for this story club beg to differ, but the reach is what we're discussing today. It's about this old woman on her last days, months of her life. It's a ghost story. It's many things. We're going to kick that off. If it's your first time joining Sarah and I have a series of live streams that we're doing on YouTube. In total, we're calling this operation the Speculative Fiction Circle, which is sort of for readers, for writers. The idea is to read great science fiction and horror, write great science fiction and horror, publish our work, and repeat. To execute this, Sarah and I have taken upon ourselves two giant anthologies of speculative fiction. This is The Dark Descent. This is the text for the Horror Story Club. The Big Book of Science Fiction is the name of the sci-fi, and on Fridays we write. Welcome. My name is Asa Merritt. My background is in playwriting and screenwriting. I wrote Six Sermons, which is an Audible original starring Stephanie Hsu. I'm going to turn it to Sarah now, and she is going to tell you all about her and the basics of this story.
Absolutely. Asa, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to see all of you here. Thank you for being here. Narrative Vault, I see you. Hello. If you are joining us, let us know in the chat if you want to let us know if you read the story, if you didn't. I think either way, you'll still get something out of this discussion. So we're looking at it from a writing point of view. And with that in mind, hello, I'm Sarah. I am a writer. Let's see, what do I do? I'm a writer, podcast producer, editor, speaker, podcaster, do a lot of different things. I created Girl in Space, the audio drama. Oh, you read the story. Excellent, Narrative Vault. Fantastic. And I also have I almost wanted to say workshop, but it's not that. It's a podcast for writers that's been going for the last 10 years. I just hit the 10th anniversary of the Right Now podcast. And so, yeah, I've been doing this for a while, talking about writing. And I'm excited to continue doing so here with Asa. So this is, we read today a horror story by Stephen King. And immediately when I say horror story by Stephen King, I mean, at least I immediately think of like,
Sarah,
Pet Sematary.
I'm gonna interrupt you for 1 second. I'm concerned that maybe you're not streaming.
Oh, let's find out. Let's find out. Hello, everyone. Sorry, we're having one technical difficulty. We're allowed to have one technical difficulty, and this is it. So I am presently looking to see if I am live. Asa, you are a million times correct. Oh, you know what? You're right. All right. Go ahead and vamp for a while. I didn't know I needed to do this every time.
So Sarah and I both have YouTube channels, and because the gospel of Horror Story Club deserves to go far and wide, we broadcasted on both of our channels, but it appears that you were not broadcasting.
Yes, we're using StreamYard, which has been a great tool, and I have realized that I have to add myself to the room every time. So thank you all for your patience.
And if you end up popping on this stream, you can later, if you find a replay, you can always fast forward to the action.
Oh, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I am just getting this going here. And in the meantime, if you are here and you're not a member of our Discord, please do go ahead and join that. We would love to see you in there. There's already, like Asa said, a wonderful discussion going on about today's story in there. Okay, discuss. I'm going to put Stephen King and The Reach. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Okay. Okay. Save changes.
Okay, you're up on Twitch now, and you're up on YouTube.
All right. I'm up on YouTube. Everyone, thank you so much for being patient.
Yes, welcome all of Sarah's.
Hello.
Welcome everyone. Should I give the quick hit of that one more time?
Yes. Long story short, Sarah had some technical difficulties and apologizes.
But we're here now. We're here to talk about The Reach, a story by Stephen King, which some people describe as his greatest short story. That is the topic of today's discussion. You are in the inaugural session of the Dark Descent Horror Story Club, where we read one short story a week. This is part of a larger ambition, program, goal put together by Sarah and I, where we stream 3 times a week. Wednesday is sci-fi, Thursday is horror, and Friday we write. Welcome, everyone. My name's Asa Merritt. I wrote 6 sermons, an Audible original. I'm going to pass it to Sarah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Asa. Hey, Rune is here. Hello. Narrative Vault. Hello again. Shout out to you. I'm Sarah Ray Werner. I am a writer, podcast producer, podcaster. I don't know if there's a difference between those two things. And speaker. And I am also the creator of the Girl in Space podcast. This is the reason I got this phone case, was so that I could hold it up like a business card. So I am also the creator of Right Now with Sarah Werner, which just came up on its 10th anniversary. So it's a really old podcast now, and that's kind of terrifying. But yeah, today we are looking at, as Asa said, The Reach. Oh, we got a Girl in Space fan. Hey. We're looking at The Reach today by Stephen King, and this is one of his earlier stories, and it was not in any way what I expected it to be. It is, I'll go into this a little bit. I'm going to give you a little preview of the story, a little summary of the story, but it is pretty much, if you had told me Stephen King wrote a short story about ghosts, this is not what I would imagine in any way, shape, and form. And it's interesting. This is one of his earlier stories. Also, I did some work ahead of time, and instead of like pointing at obscure places in my giant book, I'm just going to read this little summary that I wrote. So, all right. Stephen King's The Reach was originally published as Do the Dead Sing, which I find fascinating. And it's a surprisingly quiet and gentle story about ghosts, memories, and, both literally and figuratively, crossing over. Air quotes there. The story is set on Goat Island, a lobster fishing island village off the coast of Maine, and it follows 95-year-old Stella Flanders, not that Flanders, who has never left the island in her entire life. Not even when The Reach, which is the expanse of water between Goat Island and the mainland, was frozen over and traversable by foot. So she has never left this tiny island. Oh, good. My comment moderator has joined our channel. Fantastic. So Stella says multiple times, I don't know if anyone asks her directly in present time in the story, but she says multiple times that she simply never saw a reason to cross to the mainland. Like everything she wanted was on this tiny island. And later she says, this is my place and I love it. And you can't see it on my little thing, but that was on page 22. I cite my sources. But then we learn that Stella is dying. We first hear that she has arthritis and she's very uncomfortable. And then later we hear she's coughing up blood. She's not doing okay. She has cancer, unfortunately. Though 95 years old, she has had a rich, full life, as she explains throughout the story. One day while she's getting firewood, like 95-year-olds do, she finds a frozen bird, and I want to say it's a sparrow. I should have written that part down because I feel like it's significant. Yes, a sparrow. And when she turns around, she picks up the dead sparrow and sees the ghost of her husband, Bill. Now, when we think ghost, I don't know what you automatically think. I think of something kind of scary, but she sees Bill as he was before the cancer took him. She sees him, I think he's in his 40s. It says he doesn't have wrinkles. He looks beautiful. He looks kind. He's like welcoming her. It's this really, really lovely vision of a ghost. And what he does is he encourages her to go to the mainland. So she does not go to the mainland yet. Some time passes, and as the events of the island and the story unfold, Stella starts seeing people, and they're people who shouldn't be there. Essentially, people who have passed away, recent, all the way going back to, I think she even sees her parents or her father at some point. And they're all calling to her. And it's really, it's this welcoming, warm sense. And I think it's even that it takes place in winter too, where everything is cold. Like you feel the warmth of this community calling to her. And she even sees her friend Annabelle in the embers by the fire, Annabelle, instead of like screaming or unhinging her jaw like you would see in a horror movie, Annabelle just winks at her. And it's very warm and welcoming. So Stella one day has been convinced by enough dead people that she has seen to cross the Reach. And she does this while her family is away. She puts on her coat. She puts on two pairs of mittens. She puts on her son Alden's hat at first. And then she just sets out. This 95-year-old woman sets out. It begins to snow. The snow quickly turns into a blizzard, but she keeps going toward that mainland. Because in front of her is Bill saying, come on, you can do it. He doesn't actually say, come on, you can do it. That was a paraphrase of what he actually says to her. She crosses, she gets lost. It's a whiteout. It's snowing so hard. She feels her feet sinking into what had been a crust of snow is now 5 inches deep. And she's sort of slowly freezing, and it's a little upsetting, but she just keeps going toward Bill, and soon others appear in front of her. She sees a number of dead people. Curiously, lest you think this is all in her head, and this is something I think we're going to talk about in a little bit, even people she didn't really know were dead, so it's kind of beyond her knowing. And they all end up in it's this really beautiful scene where they're standing on the Reach in a complete whiteout. Stella has no idea how close she is to the mainland. And they join hands in a circle and they begin to sing together. And hence the original title of the story. And what happens then is, and I'm wrapping up here, there is a perspective switch to her son Alden, who's in his 60s, I believe. And he says, he's sort of thinking about Stella, his mother, and how they found her. She had frozen to death. She was on a bench right at the edge of the mainland. So she had reached the mainland and accomplished sort of her quest that she set out to do in this story. As the story closes out, I think we're left with, and this is, I think, again, something we'll talk about. Alden throughout the story is shown to be not obsessed with, but a fan of hymns and singing. And there's so many different references to singing and refrains and church music throughout this story. And that's sort of how we end, is with the dead singing. And it's just, honestly, it left me feeling really warm and wistful and lovely. I don't know. What do you think, Asa? So that is, if there's anything I forgot, if there's any points that I forgot.
I think that was great.
Okay, good.
I think that was a great summary for folks who didn't read it. That definitely covers the main beats. Yes, I think that this was a really amazing story. And for me, I think I just want to start by what I loved maybe most of all is how ambitious this was as a piece of art. It's a short story, but Stephen King here is trying to go at the deepest of deep questions, which is, how do we evaluate our lives? How do we, when we're old and gray and facing our maker, how do we know if we did it right or did it wrong? How do we go with peace or without, And so just to attempt to do that in this short story, I'm always just such a fan of artists across mediums when they try something spectacular, try something so difficult. And I think there's folks who don't have Stephen King's taste or this, that, and the third, where a piece might not hit you the way the artist intended. But I always love it when I still can appreciate how they were just swinging for the bleachers, you know, and I really felt that with this piece.
Mm.
Yes, I mean that was like my number one. I think my number one like piece of appreciation for this. Um, but yeah, I mean the biggest things that stick out for me that I would love to talk about. Well, let's see what the party
Yeah, we have
people
some comments
have to
coming
say
in.
here. Not all ghost stories are horror stories. Yes, I love that,
It's a
Rune.
beautiful lesson in that.
When I finished the story, the first thought I had was that was lovely. It was
Me too.
lovely. Yes.
Lovely. That's exactly the word that I went to, Narrative Vault. That's exactly the word I went to as well.
And then Rune follows up. Thank you, Rune. Subverting and moving beyond genre feels so freeing. Yes, I think this dovetails with what we were talking about yesterday, obliterating these lines between genre fiction and literary fiction. I think we saw this ourselves during the ghost story workshop when we had that haunting, elegiac little story that was really a love story and wasn't full of fear. If you're just popping on, we did a ghost story workshop several weeks ago where we read another ghost story, incidentally, a piece of flash fiction that it really wasn't horrifying. It really was kind of touching in the same way that this story is. I think those are great points. Yeah. Always. Yay. Kashiki. Hi. Good to see you too. Yes. So in terms of things we can learn from this story, there is so much. I think for me, one of the most striking strengths of this story is how deeply felt the world is, how lived in, how intimate. I just felt truly dropped almost as if into like a documentary. Like we're put on this place that you described, Goat Island, where folks have lived and died on this tiny island. It's clearly like a small, close-knit community. And the rendering of this community is so specific and intimate. You know, there's references to like cousins and second cousins, and there's all these little details about this place and this people that, you know, I think a sort of chopping block editor would say, look, this is not relevant to the story. This is not part of it. Oh, Sarah, you froze. Is that on me?
It might be on you. Can you hear me still?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
You're back. Okay. Yes, just the depth, the love for this community, you know, and I think that at some level you could say that those things are extraneous to the story, but ultimately I think they're central to what's happening thematically, which is this exploration of like, what is a life lived? What is a meaningful life? What is a life that we can go to the grave being like, you know what, I loved, as the critical line says. And I think that this richness of the community speaks to what that means, you know, what it means to this woman, what it means to Stephen King. I think this is like we see this again and again in his work, like small town community, the care for each other. And so, yeah, that I guess would be kind of one big bucket of places that I feel like I learned a lot reading this story, just what I just described, like the world building and the intimacy and the confidence, like it just felt so real to me.
Yeah, and it's especially interesting that this is one of his, I believe, earlier stories. And it just immediately sets him up as I know one of my favorite things about his novels, I have not read a lot of his short stories, hence Story Club. I'm excited to read more. One thing I love about his novels is his rich side characters. He has a great feel for an ensemble cast. And I feel like in this story, maybe it's a little more isolated. We do spend a lot of time just alone with Stella and her thoughts, but her thoughts are never far from other people in her family and community. And Asa, I really appreciate the way that you just talked about that.
Yeah. I mean, what for you was kind of like something else that really stuck out as powerful and well wrought?
Oh man. I was honestly, I was not expecting to be moved emotionally by this story. I read a lot of horror. Most of what I read horror wise is books and novels. So again, I'm just now starting my journey into short fiction, but having read other Stephen King books, having read horror, pretty much exclusively horror novels for the last 3 years, I did not expect to feel this way. This little story packed in it so much more than even some of the best contemporary horror novels. And that it says so many things about Stephen King. It says so many things. And I want to even say the introduction here to the story, to The Dark Descent, which is the anthology that we're working out of. I really, it says that Stephen King has done so much work in shaping contemporary horror as it is. And like you said earlier, Asa, that power and confidence, like this is a tightly written story, and it's written by someone who you can feel his drive. I sometimes play armchair psychologists when I read, and I like to get into the heads of like, what was the writer thinking? And like with this, I just felt like this driving obsession throughout the story. And I don't know if that was because it was so tight. I don't know if that was because the message was so powerful or because Stella was such a strong character. But it's, you can see why he became a legend and why he is a legend.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. I mean, to hazard how he does that, I think it's because it just right when we want it to, it reminds us that this is a ghost story. It reminds us that there's a lot at stake, and that like things are about to get weird. And there is always this proximity to violence and to horror. Like this, you know, it's really, I think that a lot of folks have this instinct of like, oh, this didn't feel like a horror story. We've seen this in the comments, but there's so many people die terribly in this story. You know, like dude falls into the ice after the thing. I mean, there's the shocking, terrible murder.
I was about to say there's a murder
of
that is
infant.
glossed over. Oh, there's two murders.
Okay, what's the other one? There's
the other
infant?
One is there's the infant
who
and
is
the murdered,
abuser,
and the child abuser,
yes,
who is like basically the whole town comes out and comes together to murder this child abuser, including Stella's son Alden, which I thought was extremely fascinating, and the Reverend at the time.
I mean, and that's part of the bravery here, because I think that King and this character are like open-faced saying this is a community worth living and dying for because we take care of our own, and that includes murdering people.
Yeah,
you know,
they'll kill for each other.
So I think that's how it sustains itself. It feels so naturalistic and small townish, but we're just like, and then, you know, it happened to me once where there's the internal monologue. So part of this story, if you didn't read it, is that the protagonist, we hear her asking this internal question to herself, do you love? And it sprinkles throughout, but there's sufficient delays in between that where it kind of like caught me again. It's like, oh yeah, this is a story about someone who's about to die. This is a story that from sentence one asserted itself as a ghost story, you know.
Can I read that first sentence?
Yes.
Just because I'm such a big fan of, especially in short fiction, opening and closing sentences, because that's where so much of the power comes from. So the reach was wider in those days, Stella Flanders told her great-grandchildren in the last summer of her life, the summer before she began to see ghosts. That is such a powerful first line. And like you said, it sets us up completely for everything we're going to get.
Yes, I think that that's going to be a huge point of interest for us in both of these story clubs, is like the handshake of the story, the rules that it's giving us. You know, it's alerting us straight away that this is not just some lobster town off Maine. This is a ghost story. You know, there's going to be death, you know. And so then it kind of like buys him time. It's like, all right, everybody, we know it's a ghost story. Now we can like take our time. Ooh. And we're going to get into this world. And we see this all the time in horror movies, where a horror movie, so often it starts with like a big death, you know, like all these like Halloween or It Follows, you know, where it's like, everybody, we're in a horror movie. It's going to get real and it's going to get bad. We like assert the terms of the piece, and then let's take a breath. Let's meet our characters. And I think that's exactly what's happening here as well.
Absolutely. Oh, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. And like you said, the pacing, that first sentence sets up our pacing, and the rest of the story just masterfully dips us in and out of the story between past and present, between Stella's memories and her current and her current journey that she's making across this big expanse.
Yeah, should we
There's a
look?
few there's a
Yeah,
few good comments coming in here.
sure. Let's go through them. Okay, Rune says it's interesting to juxtapose this piece to a King piece like The Body, where you had an external ensemble group versus an internal one in The Reach. I have not read The Body, but that sounds very interesting.
I love this
Uh,
idea of Rune, this idea of an internal ensemble, because you're right, it's told from Stella's point of view and is technically all in her head. That's so good.
until it's not.
Right.
Which we're gonna get to these other comments, but I'm gonna jump in right there and say until the very end. Hi there, LS Bardos, welcome. Till the very end, this could be a story that exists in this woman's head.
Right.
She's dying, she has cancer, she's ailing, she's 95. We're towards the end of life, anything's possible. There's significant religious tones in this. This is a person who follows Christianity. It's like, okay, cool, like, yeah, she sees her husband, whatever. At the very end of this story, again, this is a great story for anyone who hasn't read it and who's listening. Everything that we're about to say makes the experience of it no less. At the end of the story, there's this detail where other townspeople find her, and they find her in such a way that is impossible. She's wearing her late husband's green hat, and there's no possible way that hat could be on her head. So I thought that was so cool how the whole story, we're like, this could be supernatural, or it could be this woman's dying and she's having an experience. And then it's like a big smile, a big wink at the end. It's like, this was a ghost, folks. This is not, an old woman losing her mind.
Right.
Other great comments here. Okay. I thought it was very realistic, says Narrative Vault, and I didn't think of ghosts. I'm 73, and I think people see and think of people in our lives have died. Yes, I think that's wise. I think that's true, that the closer it seems, the closer we get, the closer we feel closer to those who have passed. Lore Huntress, the little whores that intersperse the weave of everyday life and the totality of one's story. 100%. Like, this is the essence of this story, the totality of one's life, and just everything that you have, your relationships and your family and your town encompassed, is like all concentrated into this like final moment. Yes, 100%. Small town realism, says Narrative Vault. Narrative Vault, engaging and agreed with Lore Huntress. Small town realism. This is classic King terrain executed perfectly here. So I have so much to say. I want to point out one thing about Stephen King's prose, and the sort of immense control that he has over language. And as you said, this was an early story, but his sentences are very propulsive. We're moving the story forward, but then at a certain time he pauses, and it's like we sit with a moment. The control is loosed, and we live in a little beat for longer. So that is easiest to show with an example. I'm just going to read the end of one paragraph into the second paragraph, and it's this second paragraph that I'm excited to share because he just really goes in. If you believe the stories, Bull and Vera had once played some house together, although it was hard, looking at Vera now, to believe she had ever been so young. And you didn't go? Sarah asked, perhaps seeing the reach of the reach in her mind's eye, so white it was almost blue in the heatless winter sunshine. The sparkle of the snow crystals, the mainland drawing closer, walking across the ocean, just like Jesus out of the boat, leaving the island for the one and only time in your life on foot, dash. So it's like we get this rich internal moment where this character is imagining, she's having this imaginative moment of crossing this great expanse of ice and going to the mainland, and sort of the transformative, awe-inspiring experience of that. But the story has stopped, right? This is all going right in on this particular emotional experience. And I just think that is mastery. You know, when to like pause the narrative, when to like stop what's happening next, and to like live in a moment, live in an emotional experience. And then, no, Stella said, suddenly she wished she had brought her own knitting. You know, we're back in the present, we're back in the story. And I just thought that was like a really elegant, a little elegant part of this story, and he consistently exercises that kind of control.
Yeah. It's really incredible. And I know from reading one of his autobiographies, excuse me, on writing, that he has been reading his entire life. And one thing, this won't be too much of a tangent. I've been reading Page After Page by Heather Sellers, and just came across yesterday the importance of reading for a writer is that so you can start to internalize these beats and to see what they feel like when other writers write them, and to just really internalize that sort of pacing, that sort of propulsion, when to pull back. You can really learn how to do that by reading.
100%. Rune cites Stephen King's memoir / how-to book on writing is such a masterwork. I keep it at the top of my shelf. It really is, and it's fast. You can read that in a couple hours, which is like a really nice thing about that book. I think that's like a great point, Sarah. And just if you're just hopping on, that's what this is about: is to get better at writing through reading closely. That's what we're doing in this story club. Is going through these stories week by week, and it's already proving super rewarding. Another thing I wanted to talk about briefly is just how valuable a simple metaphor can be, like a central guiding metaphor for a story.
Tell us more.
Well, the fact that it's the Reach, you know, we have this very physical, material, geographical expanse of ice separating an island from the mainland. And it's just, okay, he's hitting us over the head here. It's like, this is the expanse between life and death. But it's just, when everything else is well done, the anchor of a simple central metaphor is really potent. And this is also like classic King, I think, like the mist, it's just this cloud of mist, and it's like, it's a metaphor. And I think, again, it's like a matter of taste. And some folks might sort of see this as like, okay, cool, the Reach, death, life. But the story's not about that. The essence of this story is like about mortality. And for me, this is just really strong. This is how you get millions of people to read your books. Like the spine is so tangible and solid. It's like, here's this thing. This is a clear metaphor we're setting up. And then you use that as your like locomotive and like ride that to wherever in the West you want to go and look at weird stuff. But like that train is not stopping. No one is getting off. And it's just this combination of like theme and structure, and I think it's a great balance.
To that point, actually, I love this segue. So we're doing this out of the Dark Descent anthology put together by David G. Hartwell. And the introduction to the entire anthology talks about 3 different types of horror fiction. And this anthology is divided up into the 3 different types. And the first one is called the moral allegorical, which I think, Asa, you've just described perfectly. And it's stories that cluster at the first pole, which is the moral allegorical, are characteristically supernatural fiction, most usually about the intrusion of supernatural evil into consensus reality, and often use those allegories and metaphors to make their point. So it's just like, we are starting off strong in this section of the anthology with exactly what that is.
I absolutely love that. To put you on the spot a little bit, like, what are the other, because there's 3, what are the other 2 to give us some sense of like what this one is?
Yeah, totally. So the first one is the moral allegorical, and it's really sort of when you think about like, a story has a moral to it, good versus evil, or light versus dark, or he says, in our day, these stories are often written and read by lapsed Christians who have lost their firm belief in good, but still have a discomforting belief in evil. So it's very black and white, good, evil, full of metaphors. And so that's sort of this first type of horror story. The second type of horror story that he talks about is the psychological metaphor. And these are stories of aberrant human psychology embodied metaphorically. And they may be either purely supernatural, such as Dracula, or purely psychological, such as Robert Bloch's Psycho. What characterizes them as a group is the monster at its center. So from the monster of Frankenstein to Carmilla to a chainsaw murderer, a creature who acts in a horrifying way. And really, I won't go into all of like where these come from and everything. But then the third one is stories of the third stream, which is the fantastic. This is the third type of horror story. Have at their center ambiguity as to the nature of reality. And in a way, I feel like the story we just read brings things almost full circle because, like you said, Asa, there is a bit of doubt at the beginning. Like, oh, is this just all in her head? Is this a reality she's creating for herself? And in the end, Stephen King's like, no, she's got the hat. Look at the hat. This is not fantastic. Yeah. Like, this is actually happening.
Cool. It's like he waits to the very end it lives in that in-between space. Like it could be like weird fiction or whatever. Like it could be in this like, all right, this person's having a psychological experience and we don't know if there's the supernatural until the end. And then we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He calls it the fiction of radical doubt. So the horror there is not just the ghosts and goblins and such, but it's what reality do I live in? And am I really here? So it's kind of goes off the deep end. But yes, it's not her son's hat, which has blown away, Narrative Vault says. Her son Alden's hat has blown away by the wind which sings and brings these refrains to us. So
yeah, it's the late husbands.
Yes.
Anyone else here who read the story? Are there any other like really salient points or affecting moments that we want to talk about to raise? Oh yes, Sarah, let's hear it.
Hello.
Sarah Ray Warder.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I actually, looking at some of the syntax, some of the diction and the way that he uses words, I was very, very interested. And I think it happens even in the very beginning here. And when we're in Stella's mind, I'll just read you this sentence. So she thought the wind was calling her name. I was not the only one. She would have told Lois's children if she could. And all of her memories, which are written in italics that you can't see because the print is so tiny from here, it's in this weird, what would you call this? Like future perfect? I'm not 100% sure what tense this is, but it's the would have, could have tense.
Right.
And they would say, what, Graham? What did you remember? How would she answer them? Was there more? And this consistently happens every time. But Graham, Lana would press, this is not a memory. This is a projection.
Right.
And
yes. Yeah. What was going on there? What was going on? What do you know? No.
I have some thoughts.
Yes.
First of all, I've read widely. I am a lifelong reader. I don't think in my recollection I've ever seen a story that plays with this tense. So that's a thing. And if anyone in the chat here knows what this tense is called, the future perfect, I have literally no idea. Whatever that is, please let us know if you know. But you know what I think is happening here, and I think it's extra interesting because the story starts there. The story doesn't start like Stella sat by the fire. The story starts in a would have, could have, which is fascinating. And I think what's happening here is it's a conversation that Stella having with herself, I think. Like none of this is me definitively explaining this, but this is just what I think. Stella's having a conversation with herself. She's arguing with herself and she's reflecting on some regrets that I think she's had. And in not telling some of these stories to her children and grandchildren. And to poke a little bit, and I may be extremely wrong on this, but I had to create, you can't see it here, I have handwritten in the margin a family tree for Stella because, oh my gosh, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations that this story encompasses. And here in Stella's first recollection, she's talking about her great grandchildren, uh, Lana and Hal, and someone named Tommy. Tommy is
Yeah.
only mentioned once
See,
on
this is
this
interesting.
page. Can
Yeah.
you tell me what? So I'm wondering if Tommy was maybe like a grandchild who passed away and it now only
I-
exists in the would have could have. But tell me, what are your thoughts? Because Lana and
Yeah.
Hal show up. Tommy doesn't
I
show up
mean,
again.
my experience of this, I think that there's like two different kinds of family trees that you could
Mm.
in literature. Like on the one hand, you have kind of like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, 100 Years of Solitude, vast families. And, you know, I feel like Tolstoy novels similarly.
Mm.
And those books come with little trees in them because those relationships
Yes.
are central, and it does take understanding what those relationships are to fully appreciate the story. On the other hand, you have works like the Bible and the Iliad and the Odyssey, which are just give you these like streams of names, and it's like nobody really care who like Ajax's like great grandfather is. But for me, it's like those exist in the book as like filler. What do you got there? What are you showing me?
I'm so here for it because I labeled this in my copy of the story the Begats.
The
So
Begats,
the
yes,
Begats, if
yes.
you're familiar with the Christian tradition, like Asa said, there are vast portions of the Christian Bible that are this person begat this person begat this person. And so instead of that family tree that you're talking about, where it shows people and like the little lines that lead to children and grandchildren, we get an actual begat. And David and Lois begat Lana and Hal. These people begat these people. Tommy's not mentioned in there, by the way.
R.I.P. Tommy.
Ah, I really
Yeah, I
want to
mean, I
know.
just think that this is like it's almost like jargon or
Mhm.
something in the sense that like if you hear a mechanic talking about a carburetor, like you don't necessarily need to understand it to like feel this mechanic. And to me, it's like the Begats, like this list of names, it's just like creating a sense of history like through
Yes.
volume. And so it doesn't matter who Tommy is. And actually, maybe it was like very intentional not to explain Tommy. It's like this is a universe that includes all these people that mattered for 1 second but don't matter anymore. And like there was the chapter of the child molester, and like I don't remember everybody who killed him, but like a lot of people were involved. And it's just like this is like to me the sense of a life. It's like you know, it's like you have these like key characters that were in your life, but then there's just the immensity of all the people that played supporting roles. And just yes, I think actually the lack of necessity to explain who all these smaller roles are is again, that's like such an act of confidence. He's like, this matters. I'm not even going to explain to you how it matters, but its
Mm.
presence
Mhm.
matters.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really cool. I did not write a family tree.
I had to. I
That
had to.
sounds onerous.
I got so confused. I even was like writing down the birth dates, like Stella, like when she was born, 1884, by the way, and like because I was trying to figure out where Tommy went. Anyway, I'll stop talking about Tommy. But I think one of the other things, when we're looking at these would have, could have places of potential regret. Yes, Rune says it adds to the sense of depth and volume. It really does. It goes a long way in that. But, I don't even know if it's the begats section that gives us that depth and volume. I think we already have that from how she has remembered these characters in the story. And in this sense, I think the begats are just context. I know I got to that part and I was like, oh, I guess I didn't have to draw a family tree, but here we are. The other thing is these truths that she has withheld from her family and like why she has withheld them. I think it's interesting how part of our story is made up of a lot of secrets that we don't tell other people. So like knowing your own story is so different from somebody else coming in and taking a look at your story. And I think it's very, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say interesting because it's more than that, but it's curious to me, or maybe revelatory that we get the full picture of Stella. All the times that she cried, but all the times that she specifically did not cry. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just it was one thing to me that added to the dreaminess, to the ethereal nature of this story.
Yeah, yeah, there's some great comments. Thank you, everyone. We're gonna get to these.
Yes.
I want to engage with that really quickly. That was one place where I felt like a certain potential smallness in this character, or maybe like
Mm.
a shortcoming. Like it was very
Mhm.
clear that like she didn't trust at some level these grandchildren, or to understand. Like you're not gonna get it.
Yeah.
Like the reach was bigger back then, and like
Yeah.
you won't get it. You
Yeah.
know, on some like kids
Mhm.
these days, like they're never going to get it. And like that withholding, yes, in general, she seemed like a generous, like magnanimous person, but that felt small almost to me.
Mhm.
That did. So let's just
Which
go through some of the. Yeah, go ahead.
which is good. Okay, I want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
Characters with flaws, and I think we'll talk more about this through this series, but I love that he gave her that pettiness. And she even acts out her pettiness once or twice at the funeral. She like snaps at somebody. But
Yes.
I think it's so important to give your characters flaws, and flaws other than, oh, she was clumsy. So
Or evil,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Or
just like the smallness of life. Like I'm reading
yeah.
Chekhov right now, and that's like his total jam. All right, one comment here. I can see
Okay.
this as a religious story,
Mm.
believing in God to see your deceased loved ones. I agree, Narrative Vault. There was one point in particular where if this is on page 30, the very end of the story, and Alden is talking about the death of his mom. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Praise him, ye creatures here below. This is like a distinctly, explicitly um, sort of Christian comment. And I agree with that. That this is like a very kind of clear image of what the afterlife might look like, is you're passing across one threshold to the other, seeing your loved ones, and going to a happy place.
And it's interesting too, if I can very rudely interject, like growing up, my dad was a pastor, and so I grew up in the church, and I can't read Praise God from whom all blessings flow. I cannot read that without hearing the music in my head. I
Mm.
literally, and so like as I was finishing the story, that song, the melody was playing in my head while I read it, and it was so effective because
Wow.
Do the Dead
Wow.
Sing?
Ooh,
They're singing right
goosebumps.
now. It's just incredible.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Room, I think we'll put this up, adds a sense of depth and volume. Yes, the multitudes of this story and its world.
Mm.
Oh, we got a grammarian.
Thank you.
Tense is past perfect, past participle. I think. Oh, not too sure. Well, you know what? We're gonna take it. We're gonna take it.
We'll just
and
say that's right.
That sounds great. Narrative Vault. Older generations were very involved with knowing ancestors, not so much today.
Those
Right.
begats. Yep.
A sense of history, our sense of perspective, the future and the past has changed potentially from the time of this story. I'm a bit behind on the stream, so sorry. Nothing is irrelevant here. This
Nope.
is
It was perfect.
it was perfect, and no one else had answered that.
No.
Small
So thank
Island
you.
Life. Exactly. I sang it as well as I read it. Wow, y'all had a moment.
It was a powerful experience. Like
Yes.
bringing, it's almost okay. It's almost like multimedia. It's like I clicked on that hyperlink and I heard the sound.
Right.
It was for me, and maybe Narrative Vault for you too. It was that powerful of an experience because that hymn, he chose that hymn on purpose. It is drilled in here.
Yes. Yes.
I would sing it
yes.
now, but you don't want to hear that.
I mean, this also is like classic King. His like sort of like he clearly grew up in
Mm.
a religious environment, and we see this tension a lot. I think where like many lapsed Christians, there's a yearning and nostalgia for a sort of sense of community versus like an antipathy for certain elements of indoctrination, that kind of thing, which we definitely have going on here. Let's see. What else, Sarah? Are you itching to share anything else here?
We could talk about, I feel like we could talk about this story for hours. So I want to keep it, just to some of these interesting things. What I'm curious about, I did not do any research on this, but I'm wondering if you know or if anyone else knows, why did he change the title?
Ooh, great
Because
question.
this was first published as Do the Dead Sing. And I think that is so evocative. I feel like, and it's almost like a Philip K. Dick kind of existential title, and it really sets the tone for the story. Why did he change it to The Reach,
Oof,
which is
oof.
also a fine title, but I just don't feel like it's so flat. Like literally
Well,
The Reach is flat, and the title is it falls flat for me.
okay. I really like the title The Reach.
Okay,
I so this is meaty. So
go.
I think Do the Dead Sing. I mean, it's kind of telegraphing, and I think that sentence packs such a punch when we first hear it in the story. Whereas if
Mm,
it had been the title, I think it loses some of its because that's just like pure poetry and
mm,
exists outside the story and is so connected to the themes that I think like if it was setting it up with the title, it makes us like, I don't know. I think also there's Do the Dead Sing, it's more like sentimental. Like it immediately, I guess just that's my general. It telegraphs
mm,
what it's about. It telegraphs its point. Whereas the Reach is more of like, uh, there's a sense. It's a sense of place. It gives us the
mm,
sense of place. I also think it clues us into the menace a little bit more.
mm.
Like the Reach is a story that could end badly. You know what I mean? Like the
Yes.
reach could go way south. Like everyone could fall in and we could have H.G. Wells. We're doing a sci-fi club, everybody, on Wednesdays. Yesterday we discussed H.G. Wells' The Star, where a star passed through Earth and destroyed everything. You know, there's a version of the Reach where there's just like ships
Mm,
sinking and all this. Whereas Do the Dead Sing, I just feel like, oh, this is a pretty sentence. That's like a pretty sentence. So I
mm,
just think tone, it's like the handshake a little bit, right? And I think like a story where infants are murdered is one in which like we want to walk this line. We want to walk
mm,
this line. Otherwise, it falls into like sentimentality, I think. And
mm.
I think like this is a world and a woman who endorses at some level murdering infants is essential to making this story not just some like feel good like, oh, I saw my husband on the ice and now I'm going to heaven,
Right,
you know.
right.
So and I think the Reach as a title
Mm.
puts us in a position to receive that more than Do the Dead Sing.
You've persuaded me. And Narrative Vault has a great comment here. I think that really echoes what you've been saying as well. Yeah.
I think that ties into Ace's comment about the Reach being a metaphor. It's shorter, more powerful. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's but what a testament to how important titles are because it just really sets up how we engage
Mm.
with a story.
Yeah.
And by
Oh,
naming it The Reach, we're immediately clued in that this is a central metaphor of like life crossing to death. Um, Laura Huntress likes the change.
yeah.
I like the change. It's the expanse of water between the island and the mainland. She had to traverse it in order to reach not only the mainland, but after her afterlife.
Yeah.
Well noted,
Yeah.
Laura Huntress. Yes, there's like an elegance there for
Mhm.
sure in the double meaning of reach there.
Yeah.
And I just also like just this is one of my personal favorite things about Stephen King. Like place features so much in his work,
Mm.
you know, and just foregrounding place in this you know, I think is like super valuable. Like he just talks about trees and birds in this way that like they exist in his worlds a little bit more than maybe for many of us. And so this that feels
Yeah.
in line with that.
Like knowing Stephen King's other works, I am not surprised where this takes place.
Right.
He loves Maine. Yeah. He
Yes.
loves Maine, and it's a prominent character in a lot of his stories. And I mean, if you want to go into the, a little bit more into, I don't know, literary analysis stuff, the Reach itself is definitely a character in the
Yes.
story as well. It has agency. It feels like it recedes, it withholds. Yeah,
Yes, and like in the perspective of the protagonist, it changes. Like
yeah,
the reach isn't what it used to be. Like the reach, you know, it's like it has there's like a transformative quality to it. And
mm,
I think like the mainness of it all is another way in which it's just like I'm just going to tell you about this world. I'm going to give you these names that like don't matter to you, but they matter.
yeah,
And you know, like for example, at some point in the story, he references a sub accent of the main accent. You know,
yes,
like how many readers are really getting that? doesn't matter. But he's like, this is a specific world with specific people, and on this island, every detail matters. And if you live a life where every detail matters and every person matters, like you've lived a good life. Yeah, I think it's really moving. Narrative Vault agrees with Lore Huntress. Narrative Vault, has he ever moved from Maine? You know, he has set novels outside of Maine. As far as I know, he still lives in that little town.
Yeah.
And people, you know, he still goes to that diner.
Yeah,
and people don't ask his autograph.
And he has those spider web gates, like
Right.
those cast iron. I don't know if
Yes.
that's still a thing. But
well, I think this could be a good place to conclude.
I think so too.
One thing that we didn't do yesterday, Sarah, is tell folks about the next story. So a week from today, Horror Story Club continues. If you're just joining us, week by week, we're working our way through this anthology of horror stories, short stories, reading one short story a week. The anthology is called The Dark Descent. There's an ongoing Discord where more discussion is happening. Next week, same time, 3 EST, is Evening Primrose by John Collier. And just to give a little tease, let's read the first. This is not the story. This is the context from the editor. John Collier's characteristic stories of satirical horror have fallen out of print in recent years. Evening Primrose is a particularly vivid example of the subversive little moral tale, so psychologically acute that it leaves us more than a bit uncomfortable about what goes on at night in the most ordinary and seductive of middle-class environments, the department store, the abode of grotesques, human and otherwise. So
I'm excited.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Wait, Rune's got a question. Narrative Vault says, great convo, love the story. Rune, could I ask both of you a question in general? And if you want to take Rune, that is like a tease. Go for it. Shoot, Rune. We're all here.
Yeah.
Ask away.
And if we end up wrapping up the stream ever before, like if you have a question afterward that you forgot to ask, anything you want to know, we are in the Discord, which you'll find a link to in the description for this video. And you can also leave comments on our videos in YouTube, and we'll engage with you there. So a lot of different ways to reach us.
And also, if you're just kind of like hopping on the action, tomorrow there is a writing workshop, a live writing workshop a few hours earlier, where we're going to all write a piece of sci-fi flash fiction together. Sarah and I have found an open call. And so if you want motivation to write, one thing that helps me, and I think Sarah, it's safe to say for you too, being together, working in the same kind of collective space can really push one over the finish line in terms of submitting something. Rune asks, do you find you have different mindsets when you're writing different genre, horror versus sci-fi? And then following up, find yourself in different brain emotion spaces. Sarah, I think you have probably written more of both. So
I am so excited by this question. Honestly, Rune, I kind of want to record an entire Right Now podcast episode about this because, again, could talk forever. Won't, but could. Do I have different mindsets when writing these different genres? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if I know I'm writing to a genre, I have several constraints to keep in mind. I have conventions of that genre to keep in mind. Like if you're writing romance, I know this is neither of the genres that you mentioned. They have to get together and live happily ever after in the end. That's just a convention of the genre. It's what readers expect. But I feel like with horror and sci-fi, both being essentially derived from very similar spaces and having so much overlap, when I write either genre, pure horror, pure science fiction, I end up with elements of both in both, and I can't help it. And because when I write, I sit down to write and I write me. And that's been something that I've been developing as a writer for the last however many decades. I've been writing for a long time now. And I found that maybe I used to do that a little bit more, focusing on genre expectations. But now when I sit down to write, I write one thing, and that thing that I write is me. And again, that takes a long time to get to. You have to read a lot. You have to figure out your voice and all of that stuff. But I feel like this could be a really rich discussion as well.
I love that. I'm going to take a stab at that. But first and foremost, what time Friday? I believe the workshop starts 2 hours prior, right? So 1 EST. I want to get on the UTC clock. I know we have a lot of folks from a lot of places, but where I'm at right now is with the, or my brain is thinking in EST. So 1 p.m. EST, which is, what is that? 11 a.m. PST if you're on the West Coast. Yeah. And I mean, gosh, do you find, you know what? I'm just gonna, your answer was very elegant. Rune, my TLDR is like, I feel like all stories are a horror story. And and personally, the promise of sci-fi for me, having just started working in this genre, tomorrow, like hopefully several of you, I'll be taking a stab at a 1,200 word sci-fi story. Is the sort of strain of sci-fi really interested in utopia, in a future that is a version of ours, where we can see ourselves in a way that's not totally doom and gloom, while holding the darkness of the present. That is something that I think The Star achieved at some level, yesterday's story. And to me, that's like kind of what's exciting about sci-fi, is it's sort of in my sort of coming to understand it. This like, it's visionary. It's unabashedly visionary, but at its best is like still engaging with the horrors of the present moment. And yes, I think a super valuable point is that like horror and sci-fi are recent terms, relatively, right? Like, Poe, as far as I know, like we now call him a horror writer. He was writing Poe just as like Sarah is writing Sarah. It's like Poe had a vision and he put it into words, and we have now defined that as horror. And like similarly, and we talked about this yesterday, it's like genres by and large are like marketing terms, which there's that in some ways that, connects readers with writers. Like that's not, but at the same time, it's like thinking beyond that, I think is really exciting. And if you're really going for it artistically, I think like, yeah, just see what you can listen to from your imagination and then put it on the page without sort of getting hung up on the horror versus sci-fi question. Easier said than done. And to that book, page by page, it's like, yes, we're getting to this point where we're doing all this stuff unconsciously, so that like what's coming out is imagination, delight, joy, the play of art making. And we're so sort of immersed in the genre conventions, in the traditions, that all that stuff is working at an unconscious level. That's what we're trying to achieve, I think, by getting through these collections, is to build that foundation so that we can occupy these genre spaces fully like engaged,
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Thank you, everyone. Again, Discord info in the description. If you're into this, we got a lot of momentum and we really appreciate you. And yes, we'll see you next week, or hopefully tomorrow if you want to write.
Yeah, join us tomorrow. Join us next week. Join us whenever you want. You're always welcome into this space with us. We want to make sure that this remains a cozy, safe space to explore our creativity and our personalities as artists. And so we're just really grateful and glad that you're here, and we can't wait until next time.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. See you soon.